Hi, I'm Roberta. Welcome to my kitchen. This month we're in Emilia-Romagna and we cannot visit Romagna, which is the eastern half of Emilia-Romagna, without eating Piadina, the flatbread that's served with everything, everywhere, and it's so easy to make. I was taught to make this by one of the local ladies at Casa Artusi, which is a fabulous cooking school, restaurant, library and foundation dedicated to Pellegrino Artusi, who they call the father of Italian home cooking. So here's how easy it is. Flour in the middle of a board. Now you could make it in a bowl, but I want to show you the way I was taught. A deep well in the middle, in with a little baking powder, in with a good teaspoon of salt, and I want you to measure it because the salt is really important. Let's give that a crush up. Now traditionally this was made with lard, and that's where I'm varying the recipe because I'm using olive oil. You could use lard, you could use butter, but I like olive oil in this, so into the middle. And now look, the tricky bit. The nonnas pour the water in and they manage to mix it without it spilling out onto the board. It's very unlikely that I'll succeed in doing that. I've tried a number of times, never with success, but it really doesn't matter. So the way to do it is to mix the flour from the center into that liquid and just keep mixing. It is easier when it's lard because it's not as runny as the olive oil, I must admit. Just keep mixing in the flour. I add the water a little at a time because I find I have more success that way. But if it runs out onto the board, it really doesn't matter. I'm going to add the last of the water and there it goes. It's escaping now. So that's okay. If it escapes, get some flour on there, bring it back, and now mix a little more furiously until you've got your dough. It makes a bit of a mess, but it comes together in the end. And there we go. Even with that escaping water, that's starting to come together quite nicely. You can pick up those loose bits, blend them into the dough, and start kneading, because you're going to knead for a good 5 minutes until that dough starts to feel smooth. There we go. I've picked up most of my loose bits that were lying around, and now we're kneading. There we go. A good 5 minutes and a fair bit of elbow grease, and I have a nice elastic dough. That's what I want. Nice and firm, not sticky. Now, we'll divide it in half. We'll shape those halves into balls, cover them in plastic wrap and set them aside for at least half an hour. You could make this dough the day before and refrigerate it, in which case just bring it back to room temperature before rolling it out. All right, there we go. 2 balls, plastic wrap, resting. So our dough's been resting for half an hour, and now we're going to roll it out. I'm not going to flour the board because it's quite a firm dough and it generally doesn't need it, but the flour's on hand just in case, and depends on the nature of your board. I know the wood is pretty good and non-sticky. Now, we want to get it into as much of a round disc shape as we can, but it's rustic food, so don't worry too much. Let's see how we go. If we start with a disc, there's a good chance we'll end up with a disc. And I'll show you a little trick in a moment that I find works quite well to keep it disc shaped. Now, thickness varies. Some towns, some cities tend to make it thicker than others. I'm aiming for about 3 millimeters thick. Now, it's typically served quartered with salumi or cheese, but it's, especially the beautiful fresh cheese, the squarciarone of Romagna. But it's also sometimes used as a wrap, folded around some prosciutto cheese, often a bit of tomato or rocket. It's a stretchy dough, so take your time, keep turning it, You can see we don't need any flour, it's not sticking. Alright, that's about the thickness I want. It's a bit hard to judge 3 millimeters, but 17 centimeters is roughly the diameter. And if it's not quite round, I find that you can just pick it up and give it a bit of a stretch on the edges to get it into more of a round shape. And as I said, it's rustic, so I'm not judging if it's not perfectly round. But just giving it a bit of a turn like that tends to get it closer to that disc shape that we want. Okay, pan's been heating behind me. You need to make sure it's scrupulously clean and a good heavy base. Let's go to the stove and cook our piadina. So I have my pan nice and hot over a medium heat, and I'm literally just wiping it with a pad of paper that has some oil on it. In it goes, and I'm not even sure why, but the ladies all do this. Good pricking with a fork all the way over, and it ends up being part of the pattern. It ends up being typically what you see on your piadina. Now the other thing is you want to keep it moving. So about 4 minutes each side, and you don't have to turn it constantly, but you're moving it regularly, and it certainly should never be sticking. Now I don't know if you can see, but I can certainly feel that it's just puffed up, and that's been about 4 minutes. It's got great colour on that side, so now another 4 minutes or so on the other side. And here we have it, our beautiful, slightly hot Piadina Romagnola. Cut it into quarters to serve alongside some salumi instead of the gnocchi fritti, or, as I'm going to do, make it into a wrap. You need to give it a bit of a bend, layer on some prosciutto, some cheese. It could be the beautiful squacquerone. It could be, as I'm doing here, some parmigiano, and usually a little bit of tomato and some fresh rocket. Yum, yum, and yum. It's almost like a Emilia-Romagnan taco, isn't it? Enjoy. Buon appetito.